shooters and reloaders out there, Fortune Cookie 45LC coming to you from the hot lead zone. And tonight we're going to discuss the difference between the RCBS precision mic and the Hornady case comparator when it comes to these instruments allowing us to set the headspace of our brass for best performance in our bolt guns and single shot rifles. So let's go into the discussion. So for example, let's take these three cases here of .308 Winchester and imagine that these are as fired at the range from our bolt gun or single shot rifle, and we bring this brass home because it's going to be processed into new ammunition. Well, this is fired brass, fire formed to our particular rifle. So the first thing we would do would be to establish the headspace of our rifle. So we would put the fired brass into our RCBS precision mic, and we would get a reading of plus 0.002, because there's a thousands between every one of these scribe lines. So that's our headspace. What does that mean? It means that the chamber of our rifle is 0.002 more than the minimum SAMI specifications for .308 Winchester. Because if it's at 0, that's the minimum that .308 Winchester should be for headspace. So we've got a rifle that's 0.002 more. Well, that's pretty good because we can easily bump that back by 1, 2, or 0.003 by adjusting our die, our resizing die, to give us that. So the precision mic allows us to establish that. And after we go ahead and size our brass using our full-length sizing die, but set at a lower level of sizing than full-length sizing in this case, we would put the round after we got through sizing it, and you see we've bumped it back to -1. So we've bumped it back 0.003. That gives us good, reliable functioning in the field for hunting ammunition. Well, let's see what the Hornady comparator would do with this. Now, the RCBS precision mic is caliber specific. It means that if you get a different caliber, you gotta buy a whole new precision mic. So that kit's about $55. And if you have a lot of rifles and you go that way, you're gonna be spending quite a bit of money. Suppose you have 10 calibers of rifles, you're gonna be spending $550 for precision mics. Well, the Hornady case comparator lets you do more than one caliber with the one gauge, and the cost of this is something like $30, $40, something of that nature. But anyway, the way this works is you find the proper gauge for .308 and you install it into the comparator body, tighten this little set screw, and that's got this gauge all set, ready to go. Then you just go ahead and put this on a regular set of calipers, tighten the thumb screw, get that square, and you're ready to go. Now, take your fired brass, and there's actually an opening on the gauge here that will engage the datum line. Same as the precision mic, it's got the same thing inside there. But here you go ahead and actually see the datum line being engaged, and then you go ahead and measure. Now this is a comparator, so that what you have, say for instance this would be your fired brass, get that square, and you see you're at 21.5. Now you could choose to zero your caliber there if you want to, but you don't need to do that. Then The idea would be to bump this brass back using your full-length sizing die, and you wouldn't have to roll it over to the maximum. You would touch your shell holder with the die and then actually back it off a little bit because you're actually over the minimum for SAMI specifications. So our fired brass is now zeroed out at 0. And then when we take fired brass and bump size it to have 3 thousandths less, or 2 thousandths or 1 thousandth, whatever you decide that you want to do, there you see 3 thousandths less. So both instruments will give you the same reading that you can use to set your brass at 1 thousandths less, 2 thousandths less, or 3 thousandths less for maximum reliability or maximum accuracy, depending on what you want to do. And these instruments will help you get there. So one of the features of the Hornady Comparator that might frustrate reloaders is that, as you see, the case goes into the gauge, but the case has play. You see how it can go into a little circle there? Well, depending on how that case head goes against the caliper, it'll affect your readings. So you want the case to be squarely on the back end of that, but the case comparator is a little off center there, so you have to be a little off center on this end in order to get a consistent reading. But even then, instead of being at 0, we're getting different readings here. Now, of course, I could kind of play with that and get a nice sweet spot, and then we're at 0, you see. But how do I know if that was the right position or not? Well, when you get used to using this instrument, then consistency will follow. But there's also an anvil that you can buy that will allow you to more readily get the position here the same. So that anvil might be very good to get. And some reloaders don't appreciate calipers in the first place because calipers aren't that accurate compared to micrometers. But for our use, the calipers are fine because we're dealing with thousandths that can be measured with the calipers readily. Another problem that can be dealt with without too much trouble is that with the Hornady Comparator, if you have a fired primer and that fired primer has, say, some cratering, the cratering will bear on the caliper and give you a false reading. The RCBS, if you put the case head in there and the primer has anything sticking out, will not affect the reading because the center is missing there to compensate for any primers. Plus, when you put a case into the RCBS precision mic, you see it's already on an anvil on the inside. That case head's not going to be moving. And when you put the datum line down on the shoulder, then the case is squared up inside there, so you've got a reading that you can work with without having to gyrate it. So there's some advantages of precision mic, but again, you're paying a lot more for this kit. Certainly with practice, the Hornady Comparator can service very well, and if the anvil is acquired, would be worth the money. Bye for now.